I wheeled my husband into our honeymoon suite at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in Seattle. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing off the sounds of the reception still going strong 3 floors below. Rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the city lights into watercolor streaks. I was still in my wedding dress, a simple ivory sheath that my mother had helped me choose 2 months before her diagnosis worsened. Marcus sat silent in his wheelchair, hands folded in his lap, the way he'd been for the 8 months I'd known him. I moved to help him toward the bedroom, my hand on the back of his chair, when I heard it. A creak. Not the wheelchair, but something else. I froze. Marcus stood up. Not the slow, painful rise of someone using arm strength to stand briefly before collapsing back. He stood smoothly, naturally, like a man who'd been walking all his life. Which I would learn he had been. For the past 6 months, anyway. "Emma," he said, turning to face me. His voice was steady, but his eyes, those dark eyes I'd fallen in love with, were filled with something I couldn't name. "I need to tell you something. I can walk. I've been able to walk for 6 months." The room tilted. I gripped the door frame, my bouquet of white roses falling to the carpet. This was 32 years ago, but I remember every detail of that moment like it happened this morning. The way the rain sounded, the champagne bottle sweating on the ice bucket, the feeling of my corset suddenly too tight, squeezing all the air from my lungs. "What?" I whispered. "I'm sorry," he said, taking a step toward me. A step, on legs that had carried me to believe they'd never work again. "Please, let me explain." I held up my hand, and he stopped. I needed to think, but my mind was white noise. For 8 months, I'd pushed his wheelchair through hospital corridors, through Pike Place Market, through his company's offices. I'd helped him transfer to his car, to restaurant chairs, to the couch in his penthouse. I'd watched him struggle with things I took for granted. I'd fallen in love with his quiet strength, his refusal to be bitter, his gentle humor about his limitations. All of it had been a lie. "Emma, please. Don't." My voice came out sharp, cold. I was an ER doctor. I knew how to shut down emotion and function. "Don't say anything else." I walked past him, my heels sinking into the plush carpet, and locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the marble tub, still in my wedding dress, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Mascara was already starting to smear. My carefully pinned hair was coming loose. I looked like what I was, a woman who'd just discovered her entire marriage was built on deception. Let me back up. I need you to understand how I got here. It was December 1991. I was 32 years old, working 60-hour weeks in the ER at Harborview Medical Center. I dedicated my life to medicine, put off relationships, ignored my mother's gentle prodding about grandchildren. Then Mom got her diagnosis: ovarian cancer, stage 3. The bills started immediately. My father had died when I was 19, and it was just the 2 of us. I had good insurance, but not good enough. Not for experimental treatments. Not for the kind of care that might actually save her life. I was drowning financially and emotionally when I met Marcus Stone. It was at a charity gala for Children's Hospital, one of those events I normally avoided but attended because my department chief insisted. I was standing by the bar, exhausted, wondering how soon I could leave, when I saw him. A man in an expensive suit, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, watching the rain. Something about him drew me over. Maybe it was the way he held himself, isolated but not diminished by it. Maybe it was the doctor in me, always assessing, always wanting to help. "Beautiful view," I said, walking up to him. He turned, and I saw his face for the first time. Dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it didn't smile often but should. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with silver threading through his black hair at the temples. "It is," he said. "Though I prefer rain to sunshine. It feels more honest." We talked for an hour. He told me about his tech company, about the car accident 2 years prior that had severed his spine, about learning to navigate a world that wasn't built for him. I told him about my work, about the chaos and heartbreak of the ER, about my mother. I didn't tell him about the bills, about the second mortgage, about the medical debt that was crushing me. 3 days later, flowers arrived at the hospital. White roses, my favorite, which I'd mentioned in passing. The card said, "Would you have dinner with me, Marcus?" We started seeing each other. He'd send a car to pick me up after my shifts, and we'd have dinner at quiet restaurants with good wheelchair access. He listened when I talked about my day, asked thoughtful questions, made me laugh with dry observations about hospital bureaucracy and tech industry absurdity. He never pushed for physical intimacy. After a month, when I kissed him goodnight, he pulled back gently. "I need to be honest with you," he said. "The accident left me with limited sensation and function below my waist. I can't offer you a normal physical relationship." I appreciated his honesty. At that point, I wasn't looking for passion. I was looking for someone who understood what it meant to fight impossible battles, and Marcus was fighting his every single day. 2 months into our relationship, Mom's condition worsened. She needed treatment that would cost over $200,000, and I didn't have it. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, crying over bad coffee and medical bills, when Marcus called. "Come over," he said. "I need to talk to you." His penthouse overlooked Elliott Bay, all glass and clean lines and adaptive technology. He wheeled himself to where I sat on his modernist couch and took my hand. "I have a proposition," he said, "and I need you to hear me out before you say no." He explained it simply. He needed a wife, someone genuine, someone who saw him as a person rather than a bank account or a pity case. The women in his social circle either fetishized his disability or couldn't see past it. He'd decided he wanted a partner, but he wanted to choose carefully. "Marry me," he said. "Not for love, not yet. For practicality. I'll take care of your mother's medical expenses, all of them. I'll make sure she gets the best care available. In exchange, you'll be my wife. We'll give it 2 years. If at the end of that time we want to continue, we continue. If not, we part as friends, and I'll make sure you're financially secure." It was insane. It was also the only option that would save my mother's life. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you don't look at me like I'm broken," he said. "You look at me like I'm just a man in a chair. That's rare, and I think, given time, we could build something real." I said yes. We didn't tell anyone about the arrangement. To the world, we were a couple who'd met and fallen in love. His company's PR team loved the story. Brilliant CEO finds love despite tragedy. My colleagues were happy for me, relieved I'd found someone who could support me through Mom's illness. And the strangest thing happened. Over the next 6 months, it stopped feeling like an arrangement. Marcus was brilliant, funny, surprisingly tender. He'd text me during long shifts with encouragement. He'd have my favorite takeout delivered when I was too tired to cook. When Mom had bad days, he'd sit with her, holding her hand, telling her stories about his travels before the accident. I fell in love with him. Deeply, completely, terrifyingly in love. Mom's treatment was working. The experimental drugs, the specialized care, were giving her more time. She was thrilled about the wedding, insisted on helping despite her weakness. In her lucid moments, she'd tell me how lucky I was, how Marcus was exactly the kind of man she'd always hoped I'd find. "He loves you so much," she said one afternoon while we looked at wedding invitations. "I can see it in how he looks at you." I thought I could see it too. The way he'd reach for my hand, the way he'd listen when I talked about my day, the careful way he'd transfer from his wheelchair to sit beside me, always maintaining his dignity but trusting me to be there if he needed help. Our wedding day was perfect. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Mom was there in a wheelchair of her own now, weak but radiant. Marcus's best friend Rachel stood as his best woman. I had my colleague Jennifer as my maid of honor. When Marcus said his vows, his voice was strong and clear. "Emma, you've shown me that life isn't about what you've lost, but what you choose to build with what remains. I choose to build a life with you." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. And then we got to the hotel room, and he stood up, and my entire world shattered. I don't know how long I sat in that bathroom. Eventually, there was a soft knock on the door. "Emma," Marcus said, "I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to know something. I'm going to the guest room. You don't have to see me tonight. Tomorrow, I'll answer any questions you have. But please, just know this. Everything I said in my vows was true, especially the part about choosing to build a life with you." I heard him wheel away. The wheelchair. still performing even now. I spent my wedding night alone, still in my dress, watching the rain and trying to make sense of what had just happened. The man I married could walk. He'd been able to walk for 6 months, which meant for half of our relationship, he'd been lying to me. Every time I'd pushed his chair, every time I'd helped him, every intimate moment where I'd been careful of his limitations. Had any of it been real? The next morning, I emerged to find Marcus in the living room of our suite. He was in his wheelchair, dressed casually, and there was coffee waiting for me. My favorite kind, prepared exactly how I liked it. That attention to detail that I'd found so endearing now felt like manipulation. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "But first, I need you to understand that I'm not a monster. I had my reasons. They don't excuse what I did, but I hope they'll help you understand." I sat down across from him, keeping the coffee table between us like a barrier. "Talk," I said. He took a deep breath. The accident was real. I was paralyzed for 2 years, complete spinal injury, or so they thought. I did 18 months of intensive physical therapy with no improvement. I accepted that I'd spend my life in this chair. I made peace with it. Then what changed? About a year ago, I started feeling sensations in my legs. Tingling at first, then actual feeling. My doctors were shocked. They said it was rare but not impossible. Sometimes the spine heals in ways we don't expect. They started me on aggressive therapy. Within 6 months, I could walk. 6 months, I said flatly. We'd been dating for 2 months when you regained full mobility. Yes, and you didn't tell me. No. Why? This was the question that had kept me up all night. This was the answer I needed. Marcus looked down at his hands. Because I was terrified. When I was first paralyzed, everyone changed how they treated me. My girlfriend at the time, Victoria, she left within 3 months. Couldn't handle it, she said. My business partners started talking about stepping down, finding new leadership. Friends disappeared. The ones who stayed, they either pitied me or treated me like an inspiration porn case study. "So you stayed in the wheelchair because I needed to know who would stay," he said, looking up at me. "I needed to know who would love me when I had nothing to offer but myself. The doctors said I might regress, that my mobility might be temporary. I thought, if I tell everyone I can walk and then I lose it again, who'll still be there? That's not fair," I said. "You can't test people like that. You can't build a relationship on lies and call it trust." "I know," he said quietly. "You're right. It started as self-protection and became something worse. By the time I realized how wrong it was, I was in too deep. I'd fallen in love with you, and I was terrified that if I told you, you'd leave. You'd think the whole thing was a manipulation." "It was a manipulation. The wheelchair was," he agreed. "My feelings for you weren't. Emma, I love you. That's real. Everything else, the companionship, the way you make me laugh, the way I feel when you're around, that's all real." I wanted to believe him. That was the worst part. Even angry, even betrayed, I wanted to believe him. "I need time," I said. "I need to think." "Take all the time you need," he said. "I'll move my things to the guest room. We can maintain appearances if you want, or we can tell people the truth. Whatever you need." "I don't know what I need," I said honestly. He nodded and wheeled himself away. I sat there with my coffee, watching the rain, and wondered how I'd ended up here. The next 3 months were strange. We lived in his penthouse like roommates. Marcus gave me space, never pushing, never demanding. He still used the wheelchair when we went out, and I hated myself for going along with it. But my mother was in treatment. The bills were being paid. I was trapped by gratitude and guilt, and the contract I'd signed. Mom knew something was wrong. "You two haven't had a real honeymoon," she said during one of my visits. She was improving, slowly but steadily. The treatment was working. "We're taking it slow," I said. "That man loves you," she said. "I can see it. Don't let pride get in the way of happiness." But it wasn't pride. It was trust, or the lack of it. I started watching Marcus more carefully. When he didn't know I was looking, I'd see him stand from his wheelchair to reach something on a high shelf. I'd see him walk to the window, standing there with his coffee, looking out at the city. He moved carefully, deliberately, like someone still getting used to a miracle. One evening, I came home early from a shift and found him on the floor of his home gym, surrounded by physical therapy equipment. He was working through exercises, sweat soaking his shirt, his face tight with concentration. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, startled. "Emma, I didn't hear you come in." "How long?" "Every day," he said. "Morning and evening. The doctor said if I don't maintain the muscle strength, I could lose mobility again." I watched him finish his set, saw the strain in his muscles, the determination in his eyes. This wasn't a man faking disability for fun. This was a man terrified of losing what he'd regained. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Not at the beginning, I get that. But later? When we were getting closer?" He sat back, breathing hard. "Every day, I told myself I'd tell you tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come, and I'd see how you looked at me, and I'd think, she loves who I am now. If I tell her, she'll only see the lie." So I kept putting it off, until it was too late. "It was too late the moment you stood up in that hotel room," I said. "I know." I left him there and went to bed. But I was starting to understand, even if I couldn't forgive. Not yet. Things changed when Victoria showed up. I came home from a particularly brutal shift, 3 DOAs and a child we couldn't save, to find a beautiful woman in our living room. Tall, blonde, model perfect, sitting on our couch like she owned it. "You must be Emma," she said, standing to greet me. "I'm Victoria, Marcus's ex-girlfriend." Marcus wheeled in from the kitchen, his face going pale when he saw her. "Victoria, I told you not to come here. And I told you we needed to talk," she said. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure Marcus told you all about me. How I left him when things got hard." "He mentioned it," I said carefully. "Did he mention that we'd been having problems long before the accident? That I wanted out and the wheelchair just gave me an excuse?" "Victoria, leave," Marcus said. "Did he mention," she continued, "that the accident happened because we were fighting in the car? That I distracted him and he lost control?" I looked at Marcus. He wasn't denying it. "What do you want?" I asked her. "I want him to know that I've changed," she said. "I want him to know that I made a mistake. And I want him to know that I heard through mutual friends that he's been walking for months. Isn't that interesting? He could walk, but he chose not to. Makes you wonder what else he's capable of hiding, doesn't it?" The malice in her voice was clear. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about destruction. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Get out of our home." "Your home?" She laughed. "Sweetie, you've been here 3 months. This is Marcus's home. You're just the latest in a long line of—" I said, "Get out." I stepped forward, and something in my voice, honed by years of dealing with belligerent drunks in the ER, made her step back. Marcus wheeled forward. "Emma, I can handle this." "No," I said. "I'll handle it." I turned to Victoria. "I don't care what history you have with him. I don't care what mistakes either of you made. You don't get to come into our home and try to destroy what we're building. Now leave, or I'll call building security." She looked between us, saw she'd lost, and left with a final venomous, "You'll regret this." When the door closed, Marcus and I were alone in the sudden silence. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't thank me," I said. "I did that for me, not for you. I'm tired of people thinking they can manipulate us." "Emma." "Including you," I said. "I'm tired of the wheelchair. I'm tired of the pretending. If you can walk, walk. If you need the chair sometimes, use it. But stop performing disability for the world. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," I said. "You're afraid. I get it. But you can't live your life in fear of what might happen. Trust me, I know. I see people die every day because they were too afraid to live." Something shifted in his eyes. "You're right. I know I am." "I'm sorry," he said. "For all of it. You deserved honesty from the beginning." "Yes, I did. Can you forgive me?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. "I don't know yet. But I'm willing to try." 2 weeks later, my mother died. It was sudden, despite the treatment's success. A complication, an infection, and within 48 hours, she was gone. I held her hand as she slipped away, and the last thing she said to me was, "Be happy, Emma. Choose happiness." Marcus was there through all of it. He made the arrangements, dealt with the hospital, held me when I cried. And at the funeral, in front of everyone we knew, he stood up from his wheelchair and walked me away from her grave. The whispers started immediately. I didn't care. I was too numb with grief to care about anything. But Marcus cared. That evening, he issued a statement through his company's PR team, explaining his recovery, acknowledging the deception, and announcing that he'd be stepping back from public life to focus on his marriage and his health. The media went crazy. Our phones rang constantly, but inside our penthouse, there was just us, sitting in the dark, holding each other. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't get more time with her," I said. "She loved you so much. She loved you too. She told me, that last day, that I should choose happiness. I think she meant you. Do I make you happy?" I thought about it. You did. Before I knew, and parts of you still do. The conversations, the quiet moments, the way you see the world. But the trust is broken, Marcus. I don't know if we can fix that. "I want to try," he said. "If you'll let me." I thought about my mother's last words. I thought about the 2-year contract. I thought about what it meant to choose happiness versus safety. "I need time," I said. "Real time, not just waiting for the contract to expire. I need to figure out who we are without the lies." "Okay," he said, "whatever you need." I moved into the guest room that night. We lived together like strangers for 3 months. Marcus went to physical therapy openly now, started using a cane instead of the wheelchair. I went back to work, threw myself into the ER, tried to process my grief and my anger. Then one day, Marcus came to me with papers. "What's this?" I asked. "The contract," he said. "I'm nullifying it. You're free, Emma. No financial obligation, no strings. I'm setting up a trust to continue covering any medical expenses you might have, but you don't owe me anything. You can leave whenever you want." I stared at the papers. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Freedom. Choice. "Why?" I asked. "Because I love you," he said. "And love isn't about contracts or obligations. It's about choice. You should have had a choice from the beginning. I'm giving you one now." I looked at him, standing there with his cane, looking vulnerable in a way the wheelchair had never made him look. "What if I choose to stay?" I asked. Hope flickered in his eyes. "Then we start over. Really over. Hi, I'm Marcus Stone. I'm a tech CEO who spent 2 years in a wheelchair and learned to walk again. I'm terrified of being vulnerable, so I hide behind control and careful planning. I'm working on that. I'm in therapy, both physical and psychological, and I'm in love with a woman I don't deserve, but I'm trying to become someone who might." Despite everything, I smiled. "Hi, I'm Emma Chen. I'm an ER doctor who throws herself into work to avoid dealing with feelings. I lost my mother 3 months ago, and I'm still not okay. I'm angry at the world and especially angry at you, but I'm also in love with you, which makes me even angrier." "That's a start," he said. "It's not going to be easy," I warned him. "Nothing worth having ever is." We went to couples therapy. We had long, painful conversations about trust and honesty. We set boundaries and broke them and set them again. It took time, but slowly, we built something real. 6 months after my mother's death, Marcus proposed. Really proposed. Not with a contract, but with a ring and a promise. "Marry me again," he said. "Not because of obligation or convenience, because I love you, and I choose you, and I want everyone to know it." "We're already married," I pointed out. "That was legal paperwork," he said. "This is a real marriage. What do you say?" I said yes. Our second wedding was tiny. Just Rachel and a few close friends at the courthouse, followed by dinner at our favorite restaurant. No performance, no pretending, just 2 people choosing each other with full knowledge of who they really were. That was 32 years ago. We're still married. It hasn't been perfect. There have been hard times. Marcus's mobility has fluctuated over the years, and he uses a wheelchair again now sometimes when his back acts up. But it's real this time. No lies, no performance. We started a foundation in my mother's name, funding cancer research and helping families with medical bills. It's become my life's work since I retired from the ER. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I wish I'd walked away when I had the chance. The truth is, yes, sometimes I do. I wish I'd met him honestly. I wish we'd had a foundation of truth from the beginning. But I also know that life isn't about the perfect path. It's about the choices we make when the path gets complicated. My mother told me to choose happiness, and I did. Not the easy happiness of a fairy tale, but the hard-won happiness of two imperfect people building something real together. That's what I learned from marrying a man who pretended he couldn't walk. Sometimes the biggest disability isn't in our bodies, but in our inability to be vulnerable. Marcus taught me that. And in learning to forgive him, I learned to forgive myself for all the ways I'd hidden behind my own walls. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for, even when the fight is with yourself, especially then. And if you're wondering whether I ever pushed his wheelchair again after that wedding night, the answer is yes. Because sometimes he needs it, and I'm his wife. But now, when he doesn't need it, he walks. And that makes all the difference.